Hi, Curtis Akins here, welcoming you to the second episode of Advice to Grow By from the University of California Marin Master Gardeners. Today I have two special videos about birds and roses created by a video team. The first is how to attract birds to your backyard. You might be wondering what attracting birds to your backyard has to do with gardening. Well, one principle of earth-friendly gardening is protecting our native wildlife, and that includes many of our beautiful birds and songbirds. You can create a safe habitat for birds that provide the food, the water, and the shelter they need. To quote Field of Dreams, if you build it, or in this case, if you create it, they will come.
Hi, I'm Bob Maselli. I'm a Marin Master Gardener, and I'm here to give you some hints on how you might be able to bring birds to your backyard. So what you're trying to do in order to bring the birds into your backyard is to provide a habitat for them, a familiar habitat. And in order to do that, you need to provide water, food, and shelter or cover. Okay, so why would you want to build a bird habitat and feed the birds or take care of them? Well, the reason is that over the last 20 or 30 years, almost half of the bird populations in North America have gone down by 50 or more %. And so by building habitats in our homes, we can give the birds that are left a chance to live and to procreate. In this Mediterranean dry climate, particularly during the summer, water is one of the main attractants that will bring birds in. In particular, the sound of moving water, whether drip or flow. Birds use water for drinking and for bathing, and sometimes even for fun. So bird baths like this are an easy and convenient way to provide water in the great bird habitat that you're building in the backyard. And you can buy bird baths in all kinds of types and sizes. Big ones, little ones, deep ones, shallow ones. These are of a size that appeals to most of the birds that exist here in Marin County. They're not too deep. You can put a rock in it so that even the small birds like goldfinches will feel comfortable in using this bath. And they're not terribly expensive. This one is a little bit fancy. The one that you've seen before is nothing more than a simple saucer in a grid, and it can be bought anywhere for a few dollars. It's important when you provide water to keep it clean, because it can carry contaminants or bacteria that will make the birds sick or even cause them to die. It all begins with the plants, because that's where they may get food, and that's where they may get the shelter or cover that they need to escape from dangers and to bring up their young. The oak trees that are a significant part of the Marin landscape, they are critical because they provide not only food for the birds, something like 24 species of birds just in North Marin use the oaks as nesting material. If they can't have babies, well, that's one of the reasons why they're going to lose the population. Shrubs are really great because they tend to be thickets that provide protection, and also there are birds that will only build in shrubs. And ground covers for ground nesting birds like our towhees and quail. About 2 years ago, there were 3 families of quail nesting underneath that ground cover, and they fledged about 45 little fuzzball babies. If you're now thinking about, okay, what do I have to do to get the kind of plants in here that I really need? You don't have to tear out your garden. What we'd like you to do is consider adding some California native plants. Why is that? The reason is that those plants and our birds have grown up over 1 million years together. And that's really important because natives will give them the food they need. The other thing about California native plants is that insects recognize them as being beneficial to them. Butterflies, for example, lay their eggs only on native plants because their caterpillars will only eat the native plants. And that's important because birds need insects too as part of their diet. Even if the adult birds do not eat insects, but eat nothing but seeds, they feed their young insects because that's how they can get them from just popping out of an egg to flying in 2 to 3 weeks. When you use California native plants, leave the parts of the plants that birds and the caterpillars will eat. And that tends to be the seed heads, the leaves, and the fruit or the seeds on the plants. So to be successful, don't be so neat. Leave the seed heads, leave the fruit even when it gets shriveled and dried. And particularly, don't use pesticides. And don't use rodenticides to get rid of the few rodents that may come to your feeders. The owls that hunt them will eat them and they will die as well. Be more natural. So this is how many of us get started in building a bird habitat, by going out and buying a hummingbird feeder and making some syrup, put it in, and lo and behold, the hummingbirds come to visit. First, the Anna's hummingbirds, which live here all year round, and then some of the migrants like Rufus and Allen's hummingbirds. This is a particularly good one to get for 2 reasons. One, it's not very expensive. The second reason is the hummingbirds know this is a feeder by its shape and color, because so many of us have bought one like this. What's important about this is to keep it clean. In the summertime, the syrup in there can turn into alcohol in 2 to 3 days. So in the hot summer, you want to clean this out every 2 to 3 days, easily. In the wintertime, you can let it go for a week or maybe even more. The second thing is what goes in it. What goes in it is not red. So don't buy red dye and don't buy syrup that is got red dye in it. This is very simple to make. It's 1 part of sugar to 4 parts of boiling water. And that's the simple, because number 1, it's too dilute for bees and wasps to use as nectar. And number 2, it's cleaner and it's the right strength for hummingbirds to use. Most people feed seeds to the birds in their bird feeders. And one important thing to realize about seeds is they don't last forever. The nutritional value of them begins to decay almost at the time when they're put in a bag or a box. And so the first thing is you want to have a fresh supply of clean seeds that the birds can eat. If you can only buy one type of seed, then what you really want to buy is black oil sunflower. Not only do they have good nutrition, but they're also used by most seed-eating birds, except for the birds that you don't want, like house sparrows and starlings, because they can't crack the nuts. Okay, so this is a common type of feeder that's used with black oil sunflower, and it's typically used by smaller birds. The birds get at it by standing on these roosts and going in and getting one seed at a time. Here's another form of sunflower seeds. It's got no shells, so it's easy to clean up because there's nothing to clean up. The birds eat it all. It's the seeds of the sunflower, bits of cracked peanuts, and a little bit of millet, which finches love. And so it's a good either addition or in place of the black oil sunflower. And then there are many birds that like to have a mix of seeds. And so this mix is of black oil and striped sunflower seeds. And it's mixed in with cracked corn and millet that ground feeding birds like quail really like to eat. But other birds will eat it. It's a good mix to use with them. And then finally we have here a specialty seed. Now this is called Niger seed. That's because it's grown in Nigeria. And it is something that finches, goldfinches, house finches, pine siskins, and other finches really love. It uses a special feeder, and it will bring in the finches, and they will spend hours eating it, each little seed. So that's a very handy thing to have, because here in Marin County, we have a lot of finches. Some of the less expensive mixes of seeds that you can buy in supermarkets or hardware stores and places like that really don't have a lot of nutritional value. Yes, they do have some of these sunflower seeds, but they also have grains that our birds here in the U.S. don't eat. And so you're wasting half of it and making a mess under your feeder that can attract rodents. So you want to buy in a place where they have a good turnover of foods, because that means you'll be buying fresh foods. And you probably will end up paying a little more for a bag or a box of good, clean seed. But in the long run, that's actually going to save you money, because you won't be throwing away half the seed or raking it up from underneath the bird feeders where the birds have tossed it away because they don't want to eat it.
In the first episode of Advice to Grow By, I talked a lot about native plants. Did you know there are actually a few rose species that are native to Marin? Well, you're probably more likely to see them on a hike than in someone's garden, because many gardeners love non-native roses. Does that mean you should not grow them? Not at all. If you love growing roses like I do, we can still think of ourselves as earth-friendly gardeners. Roses provide food for fruit-eating birds. They munch on rose hips in autumn. And when the birds eat caterpillars and aphids, they're one of nature's pest controls. You can use earth-friendly methods to grow roses too, as fellow Master Gardener Nanette Lingerie wrote in an article for our local Marin IJ. To do so, she recommends that you reduce chemicals, conserve water, decrease waste, and use less energy. So take Nanette's advice, and gather ye rosebuds while ye may. And to ensure you have plenty of rosebuds in spring, get out your pruning shears and watch this next video, How to Prune Roses in Winter.
Hi, I'm Don Chapman here at Falkirk. I've been a master gardener for about 12 years, and I've also been a member of the Marin Rose Society for about 16 years. Today I'd like to talk to you about winter pruning of roses. We've found fossils of roses in North America that date back 300 million years. So it appears that roses have survived a long time without human intervention. So why do we prune? Well, we prune in order to shape the plant, get any dead wood or diseased pieces out of it, make sure that we have vigorous canes that are going to produce a lot of roses. I'd like to demonstrate some of the tools that are important. The most basic one is the bypass pruners. They give a cleaner cut, but the anvil tends to squeeze them. The other essential tool, I think, is a good saw. This will save you a lot of time. When you start cutting larger pieces, it'll save your hand. You need a good pair of gloves. I like the shorter gloves rather than this. A lot of people like this because it saves their forearms. Another central piece of this is a good lopper, because you can get in and trim out some of the larger pieces and you don't have to put your hand in. You'll need a rake, because one of the things what you should do after you prune is clean up around the rose bushes. These ratchet pruners are really effective. They allow you to cut very large pieces with ease, and tines about that big without any effort at all. This is something that it's used for when you're doing miniatures or you're doing shrubs. You can just, if you don't, it can take a lot of time to do shrubs if you do them with just the hand pruners. But if you do this and you just cut through them in a few minutes instead of half an hour to an hour. I recommend sharpening your hand pruners probably every 3 or 4 rose bushes, depending on the size, obviously. But what you should do is get an angle of 28 degrees, and you can just run it through all at one time, like that, so you get a nice smooth cut on it. And when you're done, turn it over and do one at the back just to make it any burrs off of it. This particular rose is a hybrid tea. It's a modern rose. Its characteristic is that it usually has only one bloom on a very long stem, and they're one of the most popular roses in the United States. We're going to take the rose bush down to about 30 inches from the ground, and that will then allow us to get a good view of what the plant is going to look like when I'm done. What I want to end up with is strong canes that are green and to have no disease in the center of it, which you can see at this. I'm going to remove all of the size, the twigs on here that are smaller than a pencil. And if you need the guidance on it, you can look at it and say everything that's smaller than a pencil should be removed. Roses only are going to grow on the new growth that comes out of what we've trimmed back here. Because you can see from these other roses, the part that we left last year, there are no roses up there. They're all on the new growth. That's why we trim them back. If we didn't, it would get higher and higher and less roses. We get rid of all the small stuff that just becomes leaf producers and don't support blooming. So here's an eye bud that's going to be a branch. And so we're going to make sure our cut is at a 45-degree angle, about 1/4 of an inch from the eye bud. The angle cut, some people think that it is very important because it allows the sap to run, and it also allows water to run off. And you want to make it at least 1/4 inch or 1/4 inch above the eye bud when you make the cut. This is a floribunda, it's an iceberg, and we're going to show you some of the growth that's on this that needs to come back. You can see how this rose has been trimmed, pruned here, it's been pruned here, it was pruned last year, and this is this year's growth off of this. Very few blooms coming off of this, because anything that grows off of this is going to be smaller than this, and we're not going to get the big roses that we're going to do. So we're going to come in, take this one down, we're going to take some of this old stuff off and bring it back down to some shorter canes. Okay, we've removed this, what I call a rack of branches off of a very old cane. And what I want to do is eliminate all of these hodgepodge of limbs, because what happens is each limb produces this limb, then this shoot comes off, it's smaller than this one. And then what comes off of this is going to be smaller than this. You start getting things like this coming off. And what you get is a lot of leaf and very little blooms, because these ones that are coming off of this are going to be so small that they won't produce flowers. So we just remove that. We encourage the old cane to put out new shoots. We're expecting new canes to come out on all of these older limbs here, and there's a possibility that we could actually get new growth from the union bud. We only want about 5 or so strong canes, so we're trying to we got one coming up here. I want to keep that one. We've got a new growth here and there, so we've got some old growth. If these don't make it, then we've got some strong canes that are going to come back anyway. This is a good one. This is a young one too. I would be surprised if we don't see a lot of new growth off of both of these. The way this thing is a very prolific grower, we should have canes that are up this high off of these by June. The rose we have here is a 4th of July. It's a large climber, and it's on its own root. It's cutting from another 4th of July rose. And it's in its 2nd year here, and we're going to prune it for the first time. You shouldn't prune it until after 2 years. That gives the rose time enough to put out these long shoots, and then you can start training them back to get this fan shape. And the reason you want this fan shape is because when you stretch it out like this, it will put up branches that come out all along that branch. If you don't do that, like this one's been left like it is, it just grows up, and the only blooms you're going to have are at the very tip. That's what they do. And if you leave them all going straight up, all you'd have is blooms at the tips of the plant. On this unilateral, we want to take it down. We want to take it down right above that eye bud, the last one that's there. Then you will get new shoots coming off of this one, and that will fill in all along here. You want to take that one out because it's going to be facing outward. And you'll take this one off because it's facing outward. You'll cut that end one off because you don't want it there. Go down to this eye bud right here, cut it off. Take that one down to there, and that one down to there. And this one off, I'll just point it out. I'm going to take that one down to just above that eye bud. Take that off. Take those off. I'm going to leave that one. That one's dead, so we'll take that off. and that's shooting outwards. That's there. Now, the thing we're looking at here is this doesn't have a home. It's just going to go up. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here and cut it off. What we're going to end up with is 1, 2, we should take one of these off. It saves that. This one I have to take off. Take that. I don't want that going in that direction. Take that one off. This one is going to cantilever out, and then we take it off. Okay, we pruned this large climber, 4th of July, and we spread out all, fanned out all the branches that we've got strong canes on, and we should get a lot of lateral growth off of each one of those canes that will then fill in, and we'll have the optimum amount of roses coming in May. I like to do my rose pruning in 2 stages. I like to go doing the initial pruning where I bring them all down to the level I want. I let some time pass. I wait about a week. I come back in the garden and do some fine tuning. It is a perspective that you get when you're looking at the totality of the garden as opposed to the individual rose bush when you're pruning for the first time.
And that does it for this episode of Advice to Grow By. You can find more videos at our YouTube channel, so please check them out. Also, if you have any questions about what you've seen or anything to do with pruning or gardening, plant problems, whatever to plant, when to plant them, where to plant them, you can email or call our help desk. Be sure to explore our website and sign up for our free quarterly newsletter, The Leaflet. I'm Curtis Akins, and I hope you've enjoyed our show. See you next time, and happy gardening.